Okay, I'd like to call the meeting this Wednesday, July 14th of the IDA.
Okay, Chairman, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I want to thank all of you for being here, and it's so good to see everyone in person. You know, seeing people on the Zoom is a big difference than seeing people in person. So again, thank you for being here. We certainly do appreciate it. So with that, Leslie, who's going to call the roll?
I'll call the roll.
Go ahead,
Chairman, Mr. Clay,
Present.
Mr. Dreslin, Mr. Engel, Mr. Jackson,
Present.
Ms. McKeague,
Present.
Mr. Paparian,
Here.
Mr. Rother. Okay, Mr. Chairman, appears there's a quorum present to conduct tonight's meeting. Mr. Chairman, if I may, before we go forward, the agenda format that we have before us tonight is the first step in a process of standardizing and formalizing a number of the procedures for the agency. The format that you see here before us is a general format that's in use in a number of agencies. Like any form, it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's something that it's our intention to adapt to our particular needs. The public comment section is for those agencies that routinely have multiple matters before it that draw members of the public. It won't always be necessary to have a public comment section as we have here. The public certainly would be afforded the ability, but the reason why you see a section like that, and there's another, bills and communications, is similar in its nature. This is something that we're going to refine, and we'll be coming forward with a more detailed and organized format in the future. So that Mr. Chairman, the next action item is item number 3, the reading and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Yeah, are there any corrections to the minutes, the previous minutes? If there aren't any, may I have a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Okay, the item 4 is the financial reports of the agency. These were forwarded to the board by our Chief Financial Officer and Accountant Al Michaels.
Al?
Yeah, did anybody have any questions on the financials for the end of June?
I'll move it.
Okay, there's a motion to accept the report, the financial report. May I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Opposed? And I assume that there are no corrections, of course. Thank you, Al, for a complete, thorough report.
Item 5 is building communications. Item 6 is reports of committees. One of the things that we're aiming to do as we move into the end of this year, looking forward to adopting next year's budget, into the following year, the audit, as well as a review of agency activities, would be to have the committees play a role. One of the things that distinguishes this agency historically is that we're smaller. We have a relatively small number of projects statistically. However, one of the things that appears to be changing in the post-COVID environment is the number of projects that we're engaged in. And so if we don't want to waste anybody's time or duplicate effort, but at the same time, we do want to make sure that we're deploying the committees appropriately. And that is something where we'll be coming forward again with more detailed recommendations and suggestions for the board to consider going forward. So there are no current reports, but that's what that item represents on this agenda.
Okay.
Item 7 is unfinished business. There's 2 items here. The first is the housekeeping resolution, Mr. Chairman. This is the annual resolution, and again, because of the COVID pandemic, we haven't had earlier in the year a meeting where we would normally deal with this. The housekeeping resolution, which the board has been provided, deals with the annual items, the appointments of officers, designation of banks, and staff of the agency. And so that's being presented for the board's consideration this evening.
Did everyone receive a copy of the housekeeping resolution.
Yes.
Are there any questions in regards to?
I have one question.
Yeah.
We seem to limit the banking institution as it relates to, I believe it has M&T Bank and Trustco Bank. I mean, there may be opportunities for us to move money to another institution that may have a higher yield, on our funds, and I hate to be limited to 2 institutions. So, if it can just be, modified to put, as long as it's agreed upon between, a quorum of the board, to move monies to, a national, chartered institution that is, solvent, obviously, and has, necessary insurance and collateralization, that we should be able to move those funds, accordingly, to best, fit the needs of the organization.
Would that be based on the rates?
Yeah, based on rate, there could be a, who knows?
Yeah,
2 or 3 basis points in today's market on $3 million, it's
Yeah.
meaningful dollars.
No, that's a good point, absolutely.
And what's your suggestion? I understand this would be something we brought to the board, and the board has the
It should be, limited to, obviously they have to hit our minimum criteria, which would be collateralization of deposits,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
whatever institution can sort of fit that need, we should at least, have them an opportunity to bid on our deposits.
Could you give us something, a recommendation for the next board meeting perhaps?
If I can make a suggestion,
You go,
Mr.
right,
Chairman,
absolutely.
that we
That's
adopt...
why I pay you all that money.
Thank you. If I can make a suggestion, we adopt the housekeeping resolution, and at the next meeting, we can put together a resolution, I'm going to pass,
Absolutely.
Mike, and then forward it to the board to amend the authorization for
Thank you,
financial
Walt.
institutions.
Yes. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So we're
Thank
looking
you.
for a motion, Mr. Chairman, for the housekeeping resolution.
Yeah, may I have a motion for, but I want to make sure everybody has a copy of it. Is, okay,
It's item 7A in your materials.
okay,
And it was previously distributed.
Yeah, it was
distributed
yeah.
electronically, right.
okay. Okay, so may we have a motion, please, to, for the acceptance of the
I'll
resolution?
move that, yep.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Motion's made in second, all in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Thank you.
The second item under item 7, unfinished business, is the resolution approving amendments to the policy manual. Every couple of years, it's been the practice of the board and the agency to update the policy manual, to bring it into accord with what is an increasingly highly regulated environment, primarily guided by direction of the Authority Budget Office and the Office of the State Controller. One of the suggestions that was made by Mr. McTeague as a board member upon reviewing the materials is that it'd be beneficial, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth.
Go ahead. Say, go ahead. You can interpret what I said, and I'll let you know.
Absolutely, of course. That it might be beneficial for the board's consideration to have a summary of what exactly the modifications are that are being proposed. One of the problems with the document is that the document's is based upon an existing set of bylaws that go back at least 10 years. So integrating the document into a digitized format is something that we can do. It's just somewhat labor intensive. So the intention is to do that and to provide the board with a summary of the proposed modifications, so the board can see specifically what the areas are without having to try and dredge through 400 or whatever exactly the pages are of material to see what's going on, and to also have some context for them. A word here, a word there isn't going to tell you a lot, whereas I've spoken to Mr. Scott with Hodgson Russ, and his firms always provide us with outstanding guidance and deep experience because they represent multiple agencies throughout the state, and we'll provide that documentation for the board to consider. So at this point, the request is that the board members take the opportunity to review the materials that have been provided, and going forward for the next meeting, hopefully within the next 2 meetings, we'll provide a more detailed summary of what the proposed changes are in advance of the meeting so the board members can review them and ask any questions they wish.
Are we under any time constraints with this at all? Okay, great.
It doesn't represent a substantive deviation, but it's the kind of thing where so much these days is not just compliance, but documentation of compliance. That's really why.
Okay.
This is, I think, very well advised and a good suggestion, so, thank you. So, at this point, I just suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we table the resolution approving amendments, and that we will bring forward.
Do we need a motion to table the resolution?
I mean, I don't think so.
If not, then we'll just table that to that particular resolution dealing with the policy menu until our next meeting, and we'll continue it from there. Pick it up.
Mr. Chairman, item 8, new business. There are 4 projects that are presented here this evening. Just to clarify the status that they all have in common, one of the things that's happened, of course, is as the COVID emergency was somewhat abruptly declared over, not substantively, but in legal terms, towards the end of June, there's been a lot of activity related to projects that were kind of in, not to say limbo, but were in abeyance pending the change in status. These projects, the board is not being asked to approve or to grant any action in relation to these projects at this point in time, other than granting the authority for the holding of a public hearing regarding them. This would give us an opportunity to review the project, to give us an opportunity to set up public hearings so that we can solicit input from members of the community and the public, and then to bring back to the board the findings of those reviews, and to give the board, of course, an opportunity to review, and to then consider what action is appropriate in each one of these cases. There are representatives available for each of these projects. One of the things, because of the scheduling issues that the agency faced when the governor ended the COVID emergency state, that meant that the ability to hold remote meetings lapsed, so that we had to do this. So some of the projects that were in kind of mid-development or mid-process have rushed to get these in here as soon as possible, because it is the construction season, and they're asking for the board's understanding and regarding that. That does not mean the board waives any right to ask questions or gather information.
Trayvon, are you all right? I know you have another meeting.
Huh. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was in tow for whatever motion we needed to make.
Okay.
And on quorum. Yeah.
Do we, the only thing we will need is adjournment. Do you have to leave?
Yeah, following whatever motion we need to make, yeah, I'll leave.
The only thing would be adjournment.
Is there?
Okay. No problem. Okay. So
Is there any-
the
I'm sorry,
motions,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Each of these has a resolution attached for a public hearing, right?
Correct. Yep, and I can direct the board, so for instance, Hecate, the representative, the project applicant representative couldn't make it because he's out of town, but he's on screen right here, so he can make a brief presentation. He has a handout.
Sure.
It's really at your courtesies, at your request. And then we have the resolution, which, as Mr. Foreman indicated, it's following the application, which is an 8A of the materials, and what that does is authorize the holding of a public hearing. We're not taking final action. We're going to come back to the board for final action with respect to each of these projects. But as Walt indicated, what we're doing here is simply authorizing staff to schedule a public hearing so we can solicit public comment on the projects. So it's really an issue of how much the board wants to hear tonight. We have a representative from the project applicant if you want, and then we have in-person representatives from each of the project applicants for the other 3 sitting right behind you.
Okay, thank you. So taking the projects in order, the first one would be consideration of a resolution to provide for a public hearing regarding the Hecate project. This is a solar panel project in the town of Queens, located in the town of Queens. And Mr. Chairman, the board can, if there's questions that are for the representative from Hecate, they can ask them. If not,
Yeah, we'll take one at a time. Is there any questions?
Well, I would like to hear the presentation if at all possible. I mean, how long do you have? That's the question.
Well, I'll take it out before the presentation. want to see.
Yeah,
So then we would have to move to, you said you would leave before the presentation?
Yeah.
So then we would have to move before the presentation to have the hearings, right?
So why don't we do this? Why don't we, with the other 3 projects, because without Mr. Jacksonville, we don't have a quorum. So we need him to consider these resolutions.
Well, can Mr. Jackson give his vote,
Yeah.
and subject to, proxy of everyone else agreeing? Right?
Yeah, is that okay?
Would that be fine?
What I would recommend is that you do each one quickly.
Well, we're not gonna have time, because he has to leave.
Well, no, we do each one right now, the resolutions,
Yeah.
and then we can listen to the
Yeah,
presentations
okay,
after.
fine, fine, I'm good with
Yeah,
that, I'm good with that.
Council's a little nervous about proxies or, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
I'm good with that.
And keep in mind that the approval of holding a public hearing in no way commits the agency or the board to.
Right, but we want to hear a little bit, just.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So why don't, so I think in line with Mr. Scott's suggestion, Chairman, when we move through the resolutions, see if the board's amenable, if the board approves them, resolve that issue, and then provide for opportunity for the applicants to provide informational presentations.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough, sure. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So the first one would be the Hecate project, okay, and we need a motion on that.
I'll move that, yeah.
Okay, seconds, may I have seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
The Champlain Hudson TDI transmission project, this is on a resolution on a public hearing and on a pilot deviation, which has to do with the fact that this TDI project goes through multiple jurisdictions within the community. Most of our projects are obviously within one. This one goes through 4, and that'll be explained to. And again, it's not an ultimate obligation of the agency, but it is a first important step to moving the project forward. So,
Okay. May you have a motion, please?
I'll move that again.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
The third is the Curaleaf project. This is an expansion, I believe, of an existing project that the agency had supported several years ago, located again in the town of Queens. And this would be authorizing the holding of a public hearing.
Okay. Any questions in regard to that? If not, maybe have a motion?
I'll move for
May I have a
that.
second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And
Okay.
last but not least is the Queens Recycling Center. This is my understanding is the building within which the Curaleaf operational project would be located. And this is again purported by the Nick Lair Way and that operation. We've done a number of projects down there, an expansion of the industrial center and the port down there. So again, we're authorizing request is to authorize a public hearing.
Sure, I'll move that.
Second.
This motion's made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Thank you
Mr.
all.
Jackson, is there you,
We're across the street now.
yeah. Well, that's what happens when you're important.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good luck, baby. Okay, so then let's move back to number 1,
Okay, and this is the Hecate.
the Hecate,
solar,
project.
project.
Is that a handout, Joe?
Yeah, and I have a handout. Yep. So Alex, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
And
Yes.
we can, and I'm gonna hand out your handout.
Great. Thank you for accommodating me. It's nice to meet you all here remotely. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but opportunity came to see the in-laws and I had to take it.
Well, and we also realized you were going to be here at the meeting that was originally scheduled remotely, and we had to revise our schedule, so we appreciate that flexibility as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's all good. Technology is on our side now. The presentation that Joe just handed out is a brief overview of the project. I can go through it now, and I'll just refer to slides that I'm presenting. I'll start with the first slide, which is a high-level overview of the project site, its location, and the technology we're using for the solar system. the Queeman Solar Farm is a 40 megawatt AC project split into 2 project entities, located in the town of Queens near the Ravenna Queens Selkirk School District. We're using traditional PV solar arrays, and we are using steel I-beam ground mounts with tracking systems, and they are relatively low profile to the ground, about 10 feet off the ground, and the same type of technology is used on our rooftops that we have today with residential solar. On slide 2, I offer a general high-level overview of some key components of the project outside of its siting and location. To date, we've had tremendous support, and there has not been any organized opposition. We have a variety of project partners that have been very helpful in the 5 years this project has taken to develop. We recently closed financing with Greenbacker Renewable Energy Corporation, which is a very large equity finance group out of New York City, Portland, and San Francisco. And this is the first project that Hecate is working on with Greenbacker, but there are a number of other projects that Greenbacker is working on that may come in onto your desks as well soon. For this project, we received the Article 10 certificate from the New York State Board of Electric Generation Siting and Environment on January 7th of this year. And we expect to receive our U.S. Army Corps permit by the end of this month, which will allow us to form our final documents to provide to the building department in Queens and begin construction in the fall of this year. We've signed interconnection agreements with National Grid the third quarter of 2020, September 14th, and they expect to be fully charged and built by the first or second quarter of next year, which aligns with our COD schedules. And we have a PPA and REC contract. We have a REC contract with Hecate Energy Albany 1, which was executed in August 2016, and a PPA with Eversource and United Illuminating, which was executed in June 2017 here at Connecticut Utilities. On slide 4, general overview of why solar farm in Queens and why it's good for the local environment. Solar, as you guys probably know, is a great neighbor. It's silent, does not infiltrate any of the water systems, and provides clean air, displaces fossil fuel, and aligns with the New York State goals of CLCPA to reach 70% clean energy by 2030. We also don't need any new transmission lines, and we will interconnect to the existing substations that are in the project site. Here are some more project benefits on a local and regional level. We expect around 140 construction jobs over the course of a 9-month construction period, where 2 full-time equivalent jobs will be in place in the summer next year to operate the facility for the project life. And there will be invariably strong indirect benefits to the local community from services and things related to the jobs that come in for construction. With minimal wetland disturbance, about a little under a half an acre. And so for that, we are preserving in perpetuity an 8.6 acre conservation area. And the project will generate about 73,000 megawatt hours of electricity, which is about enough for 10,000 homes and equivalent to taking around 12,000 cars off the road. And regionally, it's just very good for the local grid and enables the state to showcase its development of new renewable resources. Eventually, lower the cost of locational marginal price, which is the price that every consumer pays across the board. And again, no new transmission lines were needed in this project. Here are some visual simulations of some highly impacted visual receptor areas of the project off of the roads that exist. You can see what we're trying to, oh sorry, and I'm on slide 6 for those of you following there. The initial simulation is what exists in the project site today. The picture in the middle shows what the project would look like after construction, and the final picture shows what the project will look like after our landscaping and vegetation plan has been in place for 10 years. You can see that there's an adequate amount of screening that we've included for the project's visual receptor areas to buffer from people driving by, even though I think solar looks great. Here's another visual simulation, and I can provide more if that's helpful for you guys later, but I wanted to be brief here today. Again, same situation. First picture on slide 7 is the existing condition. The middle picture is a simulated view after construction, and the final view is after 10 years of growth of our vegetation plan that was part of our permitted package. Regarding the pilot, the school and the town have passed resolutions to sign a pilot agreement after review from their respective councils. The school passed its resolution on June 2nd, 2021, and the town recently passed its resolution on June 24th, 2021. The structure is 3,363 megawatts, dollars per megawatt over 20 years, where 90% is pulled forward for the town and schools host community agreement. And decommissioning, finally, after 20 years, the project will provide an LC to remove the entirety of the facility if that is the decided case or decision by all of the project partners. And based on landowner preferences, we will restore the land back to its original condition. Salvage value is not included in our required deposit that will be held under LC and trued up every 5 years. But this ensures that this project will provide clean energy for at least 20 years. And when it's completed, we can restore the land back to its original form. Joe has my email, cell phone, but here's some other information that on the final slide that you guys can look at, and happy to answer questions and provide any other additional information that you may require.
Anyone have any questions?
Supervisor McHugh, do you have anything to share about the benefit to the community beyond what we were just informed of?
Sure. I'm the town supervisor of the town of Queens. My name is George McHugh, and we worked very carefully and closely with Alex's predecessor. It was Gabe Wapner, and we negotiated a host benefit agreement with them. We negotiated a pilot. We supported the project, and the reason we supported the project is, if you know where this is happening, this is off of County Route 101, behind the RCS school, further north, in between the Lafarge quarry and the Lafarge plant. And it's a very low agricultural area, so it's going to be very well hidden, and it's in between two large industrial properties. So it's really, if there is a perfect place for a solar farm, this is probably the perfect place. It's low, it's going to be covered, and it's got the high tension wires running between the quarry and the industrial plant, going right through the property that they can hook up to. So it was just really a perfect location, really no view shed to worry about, and that's why it got so much support from the community. I don't know that anyone really spoke out against it, at least not to us.
And Adam, I have one more question. Who will be the recipients of the power that's collected there at the solar farm?
The recipients will be the local grid. So
the local grid. Okay, so yeah. The community? Yes.
Even though we have a REC contract with NYSERDA and a PPA with the two Connecticut utilities, electrons flow to the path of least resistance, so they will flow into your electric grid.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, done?
So this is a private company, and what are the benefits to be derived from the IDA? What are the approximate financial benefits that are besides the pilot agreement?
We're here, and this is a presentation of the solar project.
The costs are sales tax exemptions, mortgage reporting tax exemptions. I did not have an opportunity to read the application, so I'm just asking if you could briefly summarize the benefits being provided by the IDA.
The sales tax exemption, the mortgage tax exemption, those are the two big ones that are in our minds as well. And I think those are the main ones that we are considering right now. And really the general structuring of the agreement is the thing that we really look for your support on, so that we can get our financing in place and construct the project and start generating revenues that can eventually go back to the local communities.
And Bill, just to supplement what Alex indicated, if you go to the application, which is behind tab 8A, and if you go to the pages are not marked on the bottom, but if you go to the application, which is the first document,
Right.
flip to page 36 at the bottom. Printed page 36, and then flip a page, and flip another page, and it's like the third page.
Benefits
says-
expected from the agency?
Exactly right, and it gives an estimate of what the mortgage reporting tax is and what the sales tax is, and then we can come back to you with a calculation of what the real property tax exemption is after we go through the public hearing process. But this will give you at least an the numbers as to what those two of the three tax exemptions are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex. Take care now. You can exit out and I'll exit out.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda of new business is a presentation of information by the Champlain Hudson TDI transmission project. And I'm understanding Mr. Rich Chase from the TDI is here to provide information, make a presentation, and answer questions from the board.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll speak from this side. I don't want to have my back to one of the supervisors of our host community.
One thing, Mr. Chase, keep in mind, this meeting is being live streamed and video, so we have to take in not just our immediate audience, but our larger audience.
Is there a better place for me?
Oh, sure, I'll pass these out, sure.
Is there a better place for me to speak from?
The front.
Up here?
I guess perhaps the front of the room, Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be fine, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Foreman, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you to talk to you about the Champlain Hudson Power Express electric transmission line project that will in part go through Albany County. We've worked with Walt and Joe kind of on a regular basis since we initially filed our application with the IDA, and have since supplemented it and restated it based on some recent developments from the state. Earlier this year, they executed a request for proposals for transmission line projects to transmit renewable electricity directly into New York City. And so that was the sole purpose for our original project, which we have bid into the state in response to their RFP. But also they asked for, and I'll explain a little bit more background about this during the presentation, they also required that bidders locate a converter station, which I'll also explain what that is, outside of the New York City area. And our project was originally envisioned to be a direct line from the province of Quebec in Canada directly into New York City. So we have proposed, as part of the solicitation, a converter station to be located in the town of New Scotland in Albany County. So I'll kind of talk about the permitted project, which is kind of the base original project, and then I'll finish up with the converter station option that we also bid in response to the RFP. I've provided a handout. I'm not going to go through it page by page. It has more detailed information. I'll try to hit the highlights for you out of respect for everyone's time, and then answer any questions that you might have at the conclusion. So the permitted project, or the base project, is an approximate 338-mile underground and underwater high voltage direct current electric transmission line that will import up to 1,250 megawatts of renewable power, primarily from the province of Quebec, primarily hydroelectric power. There might be some wind power involved with it, but the majority of it will be hydroelectric from Canada, and send it directly to New York City. Approximately 24 miles of the project is in Albany County, primarily buried 5 feet below grade within the CSX railroad right-of-way. The cable, if you excuse me, I left it over here, just a slice of the cable. This is what it looks like. And there will be 2 cables buried, as I said, 5 feet underground, about 18 inches apart. Direct current transmission. The base project is fully permitted at the state and federal level, and it's the largest single permitted renewable energy opportunity that exists in the state of New York at the present time. About 60% of it will be underwater, with the remaining 40% underground. It's a $3 billion private investment in New York State, and of that, for just the transmission line base project, about $173 million of that is within Albany County. We expect construction to last about 4 years. Preliminary construction, we hope to begin at the end of this year, with a commercial operation date or in-service date of 2025. Statewide, the benefits of the project are lower electric costs, cleaner air in the form of lower greenhouse gas emissions, and a more resilient electric grid, because it will be primarily underground and buried out of sight. During construction of the project, we anticipate creating about 1,000 construction jobs over the 4-year period, and we intend to use local workers and local construction companies to the greatest extent possible. There is some specialty work involved with the project, primarily splicing the cables together, but beyond that, for the transmission line project, it's not much different than installing a water line or a gas line. It's pretty much a civil construction effort. Project has widespread support within the state and locally from the host communities, from unions and environmental groups. In Albany County, resolutions of support have been passed by the town and village boards in Guilderland, New Scotland, Bethlehem, Queens, thank you Supervisor, and by the village of Voorheesville. In terms of local direct benefits, TDI will pay sustained and substantial property and school taxes within the county and within those host communities and the involved school districts. As Mr. Foreman mentioned, the project is probably a little bit unique for IDAs and how they would handle it, because it does involve, in Albany County's case, 11 different taxing jurisdictions. It's not located in one particular town or village, and in this case, it's not. Now, I mentioned the converter station option, which the state required bidders to meet that condition. They required that a converter station be located within New York City, but outside of New York City. Our base project had a converter station in Quebec and one in New York City, but nothing in between. So we submitted an alternative bid, which would locate a third converter station for the project in the town of New Scotland. Converter station converts alternating current to direct current electricity, or vice versa, from direct current to alternating current. In the case of the base project, the electricity, renewable electricity, would be generated in Canada as alternating current. It would be converted to direct current electricity and placed on the Champlain Hudson Power Express electric transmission line all the way to New York City, and then converted from DC back to AC electricity where it can be used in everyday circumstances. With the addition of this mid-route converter station in the town of New Scotland, what it will do is that it will allow the project to collect renewable electricity generated within New York State, primarily within the Capital District, Central New York and Upstate New York, and then convert it from AC to DC, place it on the Champlain Hudson Power Express line, and then direct it to New York City. So it would then blend Canadian hydropower and New York State renewable electricity, be it solar or wind or whatever. This will result in additional tax payments to the county, to the town of New Scotland, and to the Voorheesville School District. Letters of support were provided to NYSERDA for this converter station option by Albany County through the efforts of Kevin O'Connor and Luke Rogers, and from the town of New Scotland, who supported of the converter station option as well. Yes, ma'am.
I can't quite make out on this map, where in New Scotland is the converter station?
It's, it'll be along New Scotland Road, kind of where the railroad track, the CSX
Oh, okay,
railroad.
so near Five Rivers?
Excuse me?
So near Five Rivers?
Yes.
Okay.
And kind of across from Town Hall there.
Yeah, okay.
And the transmission line will be, within the CSX railroad right of way.
Oh, I see, okay, yeah, right,
Or the
okay.
AC line, which will connect National Grid's New Scotland substation with the converter station, will be an underground AC line along New Scotland Road.
So I have a question, just because our purview is business development.
Sure.
Getting access for businesses to cross a railroad line for whatever purposes is a very time-consuming endeavor. So does adding this what's the impact of adding this transmission line to that? And just, for example, Rotterdam Mall was trying to get additional internet providers. It took over 9 months to get the railroad approval or something like that. So I'm just wondering, what is this going to do to the whole, through Albany County? What additional requirements, if there needs to be new internet cables, phone cables, water lines, anything, would businesses or municipalities need to do to get approval to cross the railroad and now your power line? Has that been considered, or is that something that's known?
Yeah, I mean, well, I can't say that it has prospectively. We've been working with the railroads for years. This project's been under development since 2010, and the railroads are our largest landlord because we are going to be within the right-of-way of Canadian Pacific, Pan Am, and CSX. And, you know, they have very specific needs that they want to see met in order to locate within their right-of-way. I would say it would be no different than if you were to cross a water line or a gas line with some new infrastructure. You'd follow the same procedures. There's nothing to prevent you know, new infrastructure from crossing our transmission line. You know, there'd be coordination.
What kind of like setbacks, like I see in your diagram, you're talking it's so many feet deep. Like if somebody needed to pass it with let's say an internet cable, telephony or something, would they be able to go under it or over it? Like what would be the plan?
Well, I can't speculate, but it would be one of the two, over or under. The cables are going to be 5 feet deep, below grade. And on top of the cables, there's going to be some concrete pads to protect from inadvertent intrusion into the space. So, you know, we'd have to consider all of those things in terms of crossing, but it's something that can be done, and, you know, we wouldn't prevent anyone from crossing the, I would say probably dealing with the railroad will be more difficult than dealing with transmission developers in that circumstance.
Okay,
I mean, it doesn't answer your question, but because without any detail I can't, but there'd be nothing to prevent infrastructure from crossing the transmission line, because we're going to be crossing a lot of existing infrastructure as we build it, so.
I mean, that's good to know, and I think it's important for municipalities to know that this is not a block going through. That this still, they'd have to go through, obviously, whatever permitting and reasonable engineering.
There would be nothing to prevent them from crossing the transmission line.
So you received approval from all of these, I think I heard you say that?
Yes.
From all of the...
For the transmission line, we've not yet received the state approval for the converter, the new converter station option. We filed an application with the State Public Service Commission and are going through the permitting process now.
Does this application assume both options? So I assume there's a cost differential if there's going to be a converter station versus not.
Yes.
And so the economics would be different for each application.
That's correct.
So the application that we have, does it assume both costs?
Yes.
So
we've separated it with the converter station and
Any other questions? If not, thank you.
Appreciate your time, and thank you for your consideration of the application.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, the third...
very expensive cable.
The third item under item 8, new business to see, is the Curaleaf project. Again, the board's being asked, has approved the public hearing resolution, and representatives from Curaleaf are here to provide a brief presentation and answer any questions the board may have.
Okay.
We're presenting two parts of, I guess, a very intertwined project, so we can cover it together if that is agreeable with the board.
Yes, sure. Mr. Chair, I'm George McHugh. I'm representing Curaleaf, the company, and Nick Laraway is representing the landlord, Carver, or Queens Recycling Center.
Right.
Just as a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, so Supervisor, are you, basically is the intention here, because of the nature of the integrated nature of the projects, are you presenting both?
Together.
Together.
Only together.
I'm
So it
presenting
makes
for
more
Carver,
sense.
he's
Right.
presenting for
No,
Curaleaf.
And I have a question also. Are you representing as council or as a?
As council.
As council, okay. Thank you for clearing that.
So what we'll be hearing is actually information and a presentation on both the Curaleaf project and on the construction on the Queens Recycling Center.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll start off, since we're first in line for the construction aspect. I had handed out a couple maps that, do you have those, Jim?
Yeah.
So what you all have in front of you is a site plan of the current industrial park in Queens. Currently, Curaleaf is occupying 72,000 square feet of a building at 167 Queens Industrial Park Lane. They have executed a short-term lease for the building labeled as Building C3, which is a 35,000 square foot building, 149B Queens Industrial Park Lane. And we have completed the subdivision and site plan review process for a 75,000 square foot addition that would connect the two facilities and allow them to expand their total footprint to 182,000 square feet. Currently, Curaleaf is operating in the 72,000 square feet doing medical cannabis work, manufacturing, processing, and other items related to that. Their plan is to expand this facility to continue to do medical cannabis work and explore possibilities as the legislation changes regarding adult use. So their expansion at this time is exclusively for their permitted medical cannabis project, and their plan is to review additional uses as they become legal. So the project as it sits is the addition of 75,000 square feet. It's a $6 million building project. We anticipate starting it by the end of July, should everything line up and we get all of our suppliers in line, and to be completed prior to the end of the year. So we have a very aggressive schedule. Everything's set. We're ready to pull a building permit, and we hope to get started pretty quickly here. We are seeking sales and mortgage tax abatement and no pilot on this project. There is an existing pilot that I believe has a year left on building C4, and there is no pilot on the other building at this time.
Okay, any questions? If not,
Yeah, I just have one. With respect to the application, the job increase numbers, so it looks like, just to be clear with the board, you've got 80 now.
Correct, and we're looking at increasing it by 100.
By 100.
50 the first year, 50 the second. So 100 new jobs as a result of the expansion of 110,000 square feet. The average salary is a little over 41,000. Most of the jobs will be skilled, some managerial. Upwards of 150,000 will be probably the highest salary that you'll see. But the average is almost 42,000.
One of the bigger ones we've seen, I mean, with new job employment, you know. So it's,
Yeah, and all that Curaleaf is seeking as a company is the sales tax for fitting up the space once the landlord builds it, which is about $5.4 million in purchases, about $432,000 in sales tax. So a lot more jobs.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm sorry, the building itself, you're not looking for a pilot on the building?
Correct.
On the addition?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
So are we scheduling a date for the public hearings tonight, or?
No, not tonight.
No, not tonight. We'll be communicating with you, though, on that.
It's gonna be a busy night in Queens that night.
Well, we thank you, Supervisor, we thank you for being here. And good luck on the project.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to see you. Take care.
Mr. Chairman, that completes the agenda as presented, unless there's some other matter that board member wish to discuss or review based on the meeting.
Okay, is there anything, any business, any other business before the board at this time?
Chair, if you want, I could give 2 minutes on the legislative results for the Assembly and the Senate.
Yes, please.
In terms of
Yes.
what the risk of drawing out the meeting any longer than necessary. What I found interesting, and we're still digesting as the dust settles on the results of the Assembly and the Senate with respect to the most recently concluded legislative session. I really think, as my personal view, is that the results of the legislation with respect to impact on IDAs wasn't impactful as to what they did do, it was impactful as to what they didn't do. There was some significant regulatory pieces of legislation that would increase the regulatory power of the ABO and the Office of State Controller, and frankly, increase the remedies and the penalties for failing to comply with various regulations, and those did not go through. What did go through were some things that I think tightened up a couple of issues here and there, which I think will be reflected in the policy manual as we go through that process, as Mr. Foreman has indicated. Things that didn't go through, as I indicated, was the increased regulation. Another one was, I think a number of members of the county legislature were following this, Chair, was that there was a provision that would prevent elected officials from serving on industrial development agencies. That did not go through. There was another one that was introduced, which would have. Well, let me step back for a second. One of the several hot button items that you read in the media reporting on IDAs is pirating, moving projects from one part of the state to another, and IDA enticing a company to move from one area to another area by giving financial assistance. Well, the general rule under the IDA statute is that you can't do that. Pirating is illegal. There are 2 exceptions under the prohibition. One exception is if the company was going to move out of state, you can do that. And the second exception is if the company had to make the move to increase its competitive position in its industry. And we've actually litigated that provision.
So what's the test on that? Well, I'm not going to say I'm moving out of state. Is that the test?
Well, it's what the test, and that's actually a very good question, is, and it's something that Mr. Foreman and I have talked about with you in the past. The general test is, are you being arbitrary and capricious, not patricious, capricious. Excuse me, it's late in the day, so I'm starting to lose my pronunciation skills. So, and what that means is that we need to document what we're doing and provide a file and create a file supporting your action. Because typically a judge will not step into your shoes and second guess your judgment. But what they will do is they will look at the record that you are looking at and say, well, why did they do what they did? And if the record is the back of a cocktail napkin, you might not win in court. But if your record is a completed application with a representation by the company, with letters from North Carolina, with evidence that the company has scouted a site, maybe signed a purchase option, and that was essentially the record that we had when we litigated that issue. So, but what was proposed in the legislation was to eliminate that second exception, that showing a competitive element would not get you over the hump. And at the risk of being sarcastic, only in New York State could they eliminate competition, and you want to improve your competitive position in your industry as an exception for doing a project. But the provisions that did go into effect, one that was notable and I think reflected some local press, was a provision that does not allow an elected official to be hired as a staff member of an IDA and be paid a salary. And so my personal view is I think that was probably not bad legislation, but it was, I think, reflected the general distrust that some members of the state government have with respect to local government and their operations. The one thing that I will add is that there was one piece of legislation, and I don't know whether this went through or not. Our public finance group, we represent not just IDAs, but we represent school districts and counties and cities and airport authorities and parking authorities, et cetera. One of the groups that we represent are city school districts. And city school districts are subject to a really unusual and very restrictive constitutional debt limit provision under the New York State Constitution. Central school districts, when they issue their debt, the amount of debt that they issue is reduced by a factor in computing whether they have complied with their constitutional debt limit. So an easy example is if you have the Bethlehem Central School District, if they're issuing $20 million of bonds, but they're a 60% aid school district, you apply that 60% factor to that $20 million, and the amount that's not aided is what counts against their constitutional debt limit. So it reduces it reduces what's computed against their constitutional debt limit. City school districts don't have that provision. So many of the city school districts that we represent, when they go out to do a large capital project, they have to get extraordinary consent from both the voters in their school district and the Office of State Comptroller and the Board of Regents. And it's a fairly, frankly, pain-in-the-neck process. What one legislator did from the Long Island area was propose an amendment to the IDA statute which would allow IDAs to do city school district projects, to issue bonds for city school district projects. And I just found that fairly interesting because the whole focus over the last, I want to say 5 years, 8 years with respect to IDAs is to restrict their powers and to put more regulation on them. They created the Authority Budget Office, gave more power to the Office of State Comptroller to regulate and review what you do. But here was a legislator from Long Island who historically has been very anti-IDA with respect to treatment, proposed legislation, et cetera. And what it does, it demonstrates that IDAs are very, very flexible vehicles, and with just a little tweaking here and there, they can do things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise back when they were first created in the mid-'70s, early '70s. You would have thought otherwise. So it's really, I think, a credit to the program overall, and I just found it somewhat ironic that was at least introduced. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Chair, and obviously if there's any comments or questions, I'm happy.
I do actually have a question, Joe. Sure. So going back to the legislation regarding the staffing, I think that this would be a good opportunity for us to review what staff we have here in the IDA, who we have on staff, because I feel like I haven't had an update on that lately.
The staff we have is considered of all types. I'm counsel, and I'm an employee of the agency. We have, counting Al Michaels, the CPA, and we have Leslie Butcher, who is the executive assistant to the agency. That's pretty much our staff.
And Paul was our CEO, right?
Paul was the CEO, right? And I'm sorry, Bill. Bill Murphy is our current CEO.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Okay. I think I might have missed that
When I was
memo,
thinking
Bill.
staff, when I was thinking staff, I'm
It's in the
looking,
housekeeping
I'm
resolution.
I'm looking down the ladder, not up the ladder, so I'm sorry about that. So that's our staffing right now. One of the things that's unique, I'd say unique, but certainly is differentiates the Albany County IDA from most county IDAs is that for reasons that are primarily historical and based on experience in the county going back to the 80s or 90s, and Al will be familiar with some of this, there were conflicts created, or at least one major one and probably two or more, that created a situation where there was an agreement. Okay, there was some type of resolution passed at some point. How binding it is or in effect it is has always been questionable, but it's been a real policy stance of the agency, is that the agency will not do a project in a locality without the consent of the locality. So in other words, if there are certain localities in Albany County that do not have IDAs. The town of Queens is one, New Scotland's another, the city of Waterville. And those we step in, but again, usually with the cooperation, the consent, and knowledge of the locality. Where there's an IDA, the IDA basically gets first preference. What's happened, as Joe had referenced over the years, there's been kind of a roller coaster ride that's pretty much been going in one direction in most of the past decade to restrict the powers of the IDA. For instance, in the last decade, well, the last one actually, the aughts, there was provision for the IDAs to do not-for-profit things. That power lapsed and was not renewed. And so for an agency like the Albany County IDA, you know, we're not like the prime.
Excuse me, Counselor. I don't know whether all of us, I don't see the necessity for all of this on the record.
Okay.
I mean.
Well, it's an informal discussion. You're absolutely
right.
Yeah. So anyway, the point of it being that the structure, and I'll summarize, and your point's well made, Chairman. Thank you. The structure of the IDA in terms of staffing has been pretty much a product of that factor. So that there's been a lot of unevenness in terms of the number of projects that come to the agency historically, and so that where you have an agency that has a steady stream, they staff up, and you know that's justified. That has not been the case here. That does not mean that there should not be a review of staffing, and as Joe has pointed out, there are issues regarding documentation, not just the quality of deliberations, but the documentation of the deliberations that are important.
But the chairman in his sole discretion could hire. Correct, I mean, that's...
Well, the chairman has broad authority under, the IDAs, yes, and as necessary. And also, there are resources that we're exploring, and this would be part of the information that we go forward, presenting software and information sources that would allow us to assist us to systematically document these and capture more information beyond simply what's in the, provide analysis beyond what's in the application. So we'll be coming forward with more information on that. It's certainly a valid question, and always something worth taking a look at. So I'm sorry, Chairman, I didn't mean to.
No, that's fine. You have
Thank you. Well,
questions?
yes, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. That's good questions. Because the history of the IDA is very interesting, and as Council have pointed out, it changes with the board budget board, so each year it seems to change things. So, at any rate, thank you all. That's the...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I could make one comment before the meeting adjourns?
Yes.
If it's appropriate. Again, my name is Kevin O'Connor. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the county, and I'm the recently appointed CEO of the new, I'll stand down here so the new CEO of the Advanced Albany County LDC. As some of you may know, Albany County did not have a Director of Economic Development for some 15 years through some quirk of circumstance. Walt may know a little bit more about this. And we also did not have a local development corporation, which every single county surrounding us has. Schenectady, it's Metroplex. Rensselaer, it's Bob Passanella with the Rensselaer County IDA, and of course the work that the Saratoga Economic Development Corporation has done. We have formed this corporation. It's a LDC like all the others. We have a board that's appointed by the county executive and the county legislature. We have developed a very good working relationship with your council, Walt Foreman, and of course Joe Scott and Chairman Clay, and we look forward to doing that in the future. We think that the IDA is a fantastic tool. Our surrounding counties have used this very effectively. Bob Passanella over in Rensselaer County, let's face it, has been killing it with Regeneron and Amazon. Ray Gillen in Schenectady with the Metroplex. Granted, they have the benefit of $8 million a year in sales tax revenue that we don't, but Ray also has been using that as well as his IDA and other things to do some very special things in Schenectady, particularly in the city. And Saratoga County, as we know, has been doing a fantastic job for the last 20 years, not the least of which is in the semiconductor industry and the Global Foundries project up there. One side note that I'd like to make here, the county executive asked me to take this role on. I was not looking for a job. I was happily retired. But one of the reasons I came back was because of this organization. You may not recall, but I think it was 2013 or 14, you gave my company, then Tech Valley Communications, a $100,000 grant. The good old days, right, when you could do those things. And that enabled me to convince my private equity owners to keep my company headquartered in downtown Albany, which I'm not there any longer, but the company is still headquartered, and that's 100 people or give it to, it's several hundreds of people that work for the company, but about 100 people in downtown Albany that are still there because of an action by the IDA. So I wanted to thank you for that, let you know that the Alliance is around. We will be attending, me or one of my staff people will be attending all of these meetings. And if there's ever anything we can do, we've developed a very close, good working relationship with Walt. And we hope to be working with you hand in glove to build the county's economy. One of the things that we're working on very closely now is the so-called offshore wind industry. We've got two fantastic assets in the county, the Port of Albany and the Port of Queens, both of which have been designated by the state as 2 of the 14 sites around the states for that activity. And I think we've got some good news already from some of the mostly Northern European companies, Ørsted and Equinor. Will be announcing major projects at our ports, and will be providing work for the entire supply chain. By that I mean welding companies, specialty steel manufacturers, cabling companies, professional service companies that is expected to generate hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in Albany County over the next 15 to 20 years. This isn't a short one and done thing, and we're hopefully going to be there to help all of that happen, and I'm sure the IDA is going to be a critical part of that. These companies will have to be located in proximity to the Port of Queens and the Port of Albany for the most part. And, I think the IDA benefits are going to be a critical tool in making all that happen. And, I'm pleased to be able to work with you and the entire organization. And if there's ever anything we at the Alliance or the County Office of Economic Development can do to help, please feel free to call on us. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Kevin, do you have a card?
Yeah, sure.
I might add, I've known Kevin, he's older than I am, but I've known him for a lot of years. And worked with him.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other business before us? If not, we entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your attendance.